In relationships, we all have our problems. We feel misunderstood, or we're trying to agree on something and we're coming from two different sides and can't find common ground. But those things aren't a problem unless they become emotional walls. If we've built up emotional walls, what it might look like is guarding your heart from your spouse, or finding fault easily and judging everything he or she says, or complaining to your friends about it, but not actually facing those things directly with your partner. And so, I will have to say that that's okay. It's you have every right to be angry, to be hurt, to feel disappointed or disillusioned right now. But this video is about considering both inner and outer communication skills that really can help you to gently break through your own emotions and dismantle the emotional walls that you're building so that you can make sure that you stop that wall from becoming a hard barrier between you and the one that you love. So I know that you can do this. We all can do this if we're mindfully and intentionally breaking those walls. And the sooner, the better. So let's talk about that.
This is the Balance Journey, where we're all about turning challenges into growth opportunities and bringing mindfulness to everyday life.
Okay, so skill number one is spotting the emotional wall, just staying alert. This skill is all about inner awareness. I'm going to be talking about three skills, and two out of the three are about the inner part of us. Before you ever communicate outwardly, these first two skills are going to be talking about the inner stuff. And so this one is about inner awareness because you know what? There are stories that you're telling yourself, and the vulnerability that you're avoiding, the constructs of religious and social constructs that are stopping you, all those things are stopping you from simplifying things. And we are going to get to the point of simplification by the third step. But right now, we need to go inside ourselves and we just need to stay alert. So what does that really look like? The stories we tell ourselves, I really do believe they have a lot of constructs mixed in. A lot of, whether it's social constructs or things that we've learned in our religion, or just the stories we've told ourselves for so long because we needed to protect our ego or whatever it was, right? All of those stories are mixed in to how we are relating with our spouse. And, you know, it can be things like, oh, she knows better. She's the mom. But you don't really believe that. You are telling yourself, well, that's what I'm supposed to. So I'm supposed to agree to it because she must know better. And the opposite is true too. Well, he knows better because he's the man of the house, right? That one is not so commonly used today, but it's still kind of in the background of a lot of our minds. So you can tell yourself, I'm making too much of this, or if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? And all of those things, because you're not addressing the fact that this is bothering you in a way that removes those constructs, you're going to start building an emotional wall, or you have already built an emotional wall. All of those stories, they create distance between us and the one we love, because it keeps us up here in our heads, and it's related to our emotions as well. So what I want to do is share my experience in how I have come to build this process for myself of, in these three skills of communicating and going inward first. And that started because 33 years ago when I married my husband, right beforehand, the Army chaplain who was going to marry us, he said, okay, well, I'm going to marry you, but I would like you to read from this selection, read some books on marriage. And while I think that was a good approach, because we really don't know what we're getting into until we're into it with marriage, it was all Christian based. And, the biblical verse, wives, submit to your husbands, that was running through the theme running through all of those books. And now neither my husband nor I are biblical Christians or even church going Christians, but this was not a foreign concept. It was now just a here's how you do marriage kind of thing. And so honestly, I really thought I could and that I should embrace this idea. And so a lot of it was on me as the wife. But I really started to notice. I started to notice that I was forming emotional walls against my husband as we were in that first year of marriage. You know, I found myself resenting him, and I'll explain why. You know, I was feeling like I was no longer allowed to listen to Spirit's leading because that's how I was always engaging in life. You know, I was already, I've told this story in some of my other videos, you know, I had left organized religion long before. So I was already making that commitment that, okay, God, it's just you and me, and I'm going to really trust that you're guiding me, and then I'm going to make sure to stay humble so that, you know, it's not my ego speaking, right? Um, so I found myself resenting him because the narrative, the construct, in my way of looking at it, was you're supposed to submit to your husband, trust that, you know? And so instead of also acknowledging that, okay, God is speaking to me as well, it's like it took that out of the equation. And here's the problem, it's not the problem that a wife is submitting to her husband. If you are doing so and truly at peace with that, there's no problem. But there's always a problem if we're creating emotional walls, if we notice that it's building resentment, it's building something up within us, right? And I was spotting those emotional walls that I was building. And I didn't like who I was becoming. I was becoming kind of a bitchy person, to be honest with you, because, you know, I was squelching and suppressing what I felt was valid contribution, you know, in my ideas, in my voicing something or anything like that, because I thought that was the right thing to do. So this is where we do have to stay alert. Always just staying alert to, well, whatever's going on between my spouse and myself, my partner and myself, you know, when we notice our emotional walls building, that's our job, is to say, what's really going on? And that's what takes us to skill number 2, because we really need to get real with ourselves. And that's exactly what I started doing. So, you know, skill number 2 is getting honest with yourself and seeking for awareness. So you already noticed, right, with skill number 1, that you're seeing these emotional walls building up. You're noticing it because you're noticing yourself. Your spouse doesn't even get it. My husband didn't know. He didn't know that I was building up resentments and that I wasn't truly at peace and happy. Like, I never felt like we'd really resolved something, because in the end it was always, oh, well, I'm supposed to submit. So, okay, fine. So in this second skill, you know, when you're getting honest with yourself and you're seeking awareness, right? What I started to do was go inward again. This is the second part about going inward. And I was really saying, what is really bothering me, God? And how do I work through this? I don't want to be this bitchy person to my husband. And when I wanted to hold myself to that standard, to being in integrity with the relationship we had, then I knew I had to clear this stuff, right? The stuff that was inside of me. And so here's the problem, you know, when we're seeking awareness, we cannot go and complain to our friends. I mean, you know, if you notice yourself continuously having little cutting remarks about your spouse, or complaining about the stuff, or distracting yourself to keep yourself busy, all of that is just an avoidance, and it is blocking you from really just going inward. So don't go outward. If you notice that you've been dropping these remarks to the people you talk to, your buddies, your friends, then catch yourself and just say, okay, this is that skill number 2. I still need to go inward, because the only person you're really going to end up communicating outward with about this is going to be your partner. That's going to be the person that you work through this with. Nobody else is going to be involved. No friends, no mom, dad, or anybody. So just going inward, you know, you are asking, what is the real issue in my heart and in my mind? Because that's where you're feeling it. You're feeling it in the mind and in the heart, but you're making sure to include spirit now, and you're saying, God, I need help. I need awareness. And this is where you have to be willing to say, I don't know the stories I'm telling myself, because they don't sound like stories to us. They sound like the truth. But whatever it is, you're just saying, I really want true awareness, not emotionalize, like, oh, he thinks he knows better, doesn't he? Or I don't matter to her, right? We have these emotional lies, and we have to be able to come to God in vulnerability and say, this is hurting me, but is it really true? We have to make that assessment. And definitely, I think it's important that we realize you're going to have to ask more than once. Because if we're fumbling in our feelings, we don't really know what's happening. We just know, ooh, I'm starting to spot these emotional walls that just make me get a little bit blocked off from, the person that, that's my everything, right? At least when you start out, that's exactly how you feel. So you want to immediately catch yourself. Oh, there's an emotional wall going up, so you can break it back down. And so if you're fumbling in your feelings and you're seeking awareness, it's going to take time. You're going to have to come back and review with repeated assessments, repeated requests for guidance and help. Every time you notice, wow, that was a kind of sarcastic remark I just dropped, I guess there's still something bugging me, right? We come back, we review with repeated assessment, and then you got to allow for awareness. That means you have to silence the stories and say, God, I need awareness of my pain, my hurt, the things that have always been my default. I need to catch myself now in those, because I don't want to bring that into my relationship here. And you have to be measuring your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts with mind, heart, and spirit in that way. And so in my story, what I was doing was I hated being emotionally dishonest with my husband. That was, I was a very innocent, open person. So realizing that I was starting to close off, I didn't like the feeling, and I certainly didn't like how it was bringing up this bitchiness and stuff. That was the key. It just made me say, he doesn't deserve this. If there is really an issue, like, oh, he thinks he's superior to me or something, or whatever my stories were, if that's really true, I need to be more direct. I need to address it, not make snide comments, right? And be unhappy in my heart and in my mind. So I did. I talked to God a lot, asking for clarity. What am I supposed to do? And over time, I did realize, oh, this is emotional walls, and this is where it's coming from for myself, because I had my own, like I said, my big one was realizing that I keep telling myself, you're supposed to submit. So to me, that was something that had come from the outside. I had tried to blend it in with my understanding of life and where I was going, and it just could not fit. I'm not telling anybody that it doesn't fit for you. If that's truly where your heart is and that's what you feel guided by, then it's fine, right? But I knew it was the big part of my emotional walls that I was building up. And so here I am knowing, okay, God, I've always been trying to honor the guidance you're giving me. And now it was almost like I was telling myself, nope, shut that out. Nope, focus here. This is what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And so I just couldn't not respect God. I felt conflicted, right? So my awareness was, okay, I'm actually not as mad at him as I am mad at myself, because I was in that conflict, And I just told myself, I'm going to have to take that out of the equation. I'm going to have to return to who I was when we were not having this expectation of this is how you should be a wife, and just try to figure out, okay, God, how can I humbly honor my marriage, honor my spouse, but also honor my own guidance and my own truth, and how can we blend that? And so in that sense, I came to more emotional honesty with my husband. And it's really true that you got to name the feeling before you talk about it. You have to understand yourself enough before you go and say, now I want to go outward and I want to actually engage in some sort of communication about this. Because then you won't let the emotional lies within yourself run the show. Okay? So when you're ready, you can bring your issues to your partner and work through them together. And so that's what skill number 3 is. That's where we're actually doing the outer communicating now. We're bringing things to the table in a gentle way, and we are renewing connection. Okay, so in renewing connection, the goal is to clear the air, to understand each other better, and just no blaming, no shaming. We have to hold ourselves accountable and be strict with ourselves, that within the communication, we stop ourselves from that so that we can really be seeking connection with each other. And I think you can review the situation in way something like this. You could say, okay, well, here's how I felt. Start with that. Here's how I felt. And this is what it made me believe. It made me believe this about myself. It made me believe certain things about you or about our relationship, right? And then you can just say, and this is the personal issue that it kind of riled up in me. I was scared you don't care. Whatever your personal issue was, you've done the work, and so you understanding yourself well enough to say, that's where I start. And then you can address the issue of, look, but we came to a conclusion at the time, and I'm not settled with it. So can we rediscuss this, right? And then you rediscuss. You are looking for solutions together, and you're doing so with respect. You're understanding yourself, and you're going to therefore be able to lead the conversation in a totally different way. And you're coming to your situation seeking that new connection, renewed connection, really. And the sooner you do this, obviously, the easier it is to break down any walls that were starting to build up. You are going to be listening to each other in a way that you weren't listening to each other if you had emotional walls that were building up or that had built up, and then whatever you were trying to work through or talk about, the emotional wall was already there. So, in understanding that a lot of the wall is your own, you know, that's why I call it emotional walls, because so much of it nobody even sees. But because we're feeling the way we're feeling inside, we're creating a barrier. And then our husband or our wife is like, what is wrong? What is up? Like, and pretty soon, if we're not willing to break that emotional wall as soon as we notice it within ourselves, the other person thinks, who the heck did I marry? Or, they start to believe certain things about you that aren't true. So it's really important to be breaking those walls as we go, as we spot them, because they are within us, yeah? And the less that they can ever build up between our partner and us, the better. We have so much to say about that because we're the ones who notice them. And, it does cloud our connection between us and those that we love. And we really have, at any time of life, the opportunity to say, I can humble myself, I can be vulnerable and seek those first two skills inwardly, and then go outwardly and say, look, even if it's, many years later or something, I'm now clear on myself, and can we sit down and talk about this? I'm telling you, the fact that you're willing to do that inner work, it will pave the way. God wants us to renew connection and to find what we can with each other, even if it's just understanding that, okay, maybe we won't stay together, but we understand each other's flaws, and you are taking accountability. So wherever you are in your relationship life, you have opportunity to use these communication skills to increase connection and really and truly to break the emotional walls as they come up. And in my own situation, I really, from that time on, I realized, okay, things are going to come up. I'm going to notice it. I'm going to start noticing how I'm reacting in bitchy ways and stuff. And I'm going to immediately stop it and tell myself, nope, that's something's wrong. Something's negative within me, a negative emotion that I haven't reconciled, So in the beginning, the conversations I had with my husband, I could barely get the words out. I understood myself, but I wasn't used to expressing myself. And I had to say some hard things at times, things that I said, you're not living up to your integrity, something like that, which I felt like I can tell myself that, but to tell someone else that was a hard thing for me. But it's okay. did get past that, and one of the key things was we agreed that there would not be any interruption. So that even though he thought, oh, I get it now, and he wanted to engage in the conversation, I would tell him, no, I need to just get this out, and God bless the man I married, because he would wait patiently and he would truly absorb and listen. So we have really built something incredible in terms of, if you're not building emotional walls, what are you building? You're building connection. So instead of having emotional walls between us, we were building a really, really strong bridge. And so even though those first conversations, they were very halting, and I barely could really express myself, I really think that we both came to the situation understanding that we didn't want these emotional walls to build up between us. And we did want to seek for balance, a balance of respect for each other, a balance of how we contributed towards solutions, and then a balance of also including God, where we each, in our own way, we're humbling ourselves to Spirit's leading, as well as wanting to come back to discussions and figure out, where are we now? So even when you come through this third skill and you are now communicating with your spouse in this outward way, it's not going to always be that you come to a solution right away, or that you have everything in agreement and it just feels great. But I really do believe you will have cleared the vibration of negativity, because you're saying, here's how I felt. This is valid and it's important to me. And you're expecting that your partner respects that, regardless of whether that's I didn't intend to do that. It doesn't matter. They shouldn't be trying to defend themselves as much as they can accept, because we all know, we've all had times where we've reacted based on our own pain, right? And based on misunderstandings. So we're trying to establish this balance of knowing that we're going to validate first, we're going to clear the air there, we're going to have a more settledness, but we may not have come to our final conclusion on whatever the issue was that we have to discuss and make a decision on, right? And in that sense, I just know that for us, we just wait. When we're not quite sure, okay, if we have time, we'll wait. We'll say, I don't know. It's one of those, I see where you're coming from, but I'm just not sure. And it's not because I want my way and he wants his way. It's not like that, We're listening to each other's concerns, each other's viewpoints, but we're also kind of waiting for a settledness within ourselves. And so we definitely also ask Spirit, okay, how is there any reason why I'm resisting this? Is there any reason why we couldn't go forward that direction? And if something kind of comes up, we might bring that into conversation, right? And just be able to talk about that. So that's where this balance is super dynamic, because it's not only balancing here with our partner, but it's also balancing within ourselves and then returning to the discussion. And in that sense, I really think that communication then becomes a good flow, and we know that we will find resolution. We just have to stay connected and stay engaged with that. So those are the 3 communication skills that have really helped me, and they can help you too. So in closing, I want to leave you with this challenge. This week, just try breaking down one emotional wall in yourself. Just review the video if that helps, and then comment below, what is the emotional lie that you've been telling yourself that maybe you just never really knew? Because we're all going through this, you're not alone. And as soon as you recognize what it is for you, you're taking back your power. You are returning yourself to center and saying, I can now move forward from a place of awareness, right? And I'm not going to let my emotional pain build any more emotional walls. So I really look forward to hearing from you, and I am cheering you on in renewing your connection in your relationship. So go get after it. You've got this.